Welcome to the London Commercial Offices podcast with me, your host, Steve Berridge, Managing Director at Fidgens Cost Management. This is a podcast where we share the stories, career paths, lessons and insights from some of the industry's most influential people. Anything contained within our podcast should not be considered professional advice, and if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe or follow buttons to ensure you don't miss any of the amazing guests we've got coming up. It also really helps us grow the show. Thanks. I'm joined today by Daniel Johnson from ADP Consulting. Daniel's well known across the industry as a prominent services engineer. Having worked at several of the well-known M&E design firms in London, he's now scaling a team at ADP as head of UK growth. Originally founded in 2011, ADP are a global engineering consultancy, employing more than 300 people in 6 offices, offering a wide range of services including M&E design, ITAV, acoustics and fire. A progressive consultancy with a big focus on sustainability to ensure we're leaving a legacy for future generations. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm looking forward to hearing about your new role at ADP, but before we get there, it's always useful, I think, for the listeners to kind of go right back to the start, sort of what got you into the industry, you know, how and why you are where you are now. Were you passionate about electrics as a child?
Well, I wasn't wiring 3-pin plugs as a 5-year-old, Steve. But,
good to know.
Passionate, I'm not sure as a child. And I don't think any child is passionate about engineering as a child. It's one of those industries, if you speak to any engineer, they don't tend to aim or target as falling into an engineering practice. It's something they fall into. They don't sort of guide themselves towards that route.
Same as QSing, I think. I wasn't interested in QSing as a child either.
You wasn't playing with an abacus as a child.
I wasn't.
Yeah. My introduction was to engineering generally was via the electrical route. So I didn't go the conventional route of bachelor's, degree straight out of, doing my A levels. My route was a little bit more convoluted, probably slightly taller mountain to climb because I dropped out of college. So I left school, all my GCSEs, started my A levels, started advanced maths, chemistry and biology.
Crikey.
So I only picked a couple of simple subjects and I wasn't failing, but I was bored, Steve. If you can be bored, which wouldn't surprise a lot of people who know me well, is that I couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes. I was quite easily distracted through a lot of the college process. So it just wasn't for me. College isn't for everyone. My 16-year-old son, funnily enough, is exactly the same. School is not for him. He's not an academic. He's a smart lad, but school is not necessarily for him or the qualification process. So yeah, I dropped out of college. Didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't have any direction. My dad is a retired electrician now, but was an electrician at the time. He was hell-bent on me not becoming an electrician. Over my dead body, will you join this industry? It's a nightmare. It's this, it's that, it's whatever. So off my own back, I was applying for apprenticeship schemes. I figured that was going to be my route. At the time, you didn't legally have to be in school, which you do now until you was 18. So I could go into the workforce without an apprenticeship scheme, but I chose to go through a vocational route to get further qualifications. So I applied for various things from Thames Water to fibre engineer to telecoms engineer, successful in a couple of positions. I got offered a couple of jobs, but as I was walking through the path of or navigating the path of taking those roles, they just weren't for me in terms of what they could offer. And it was a very different world back then than it is now. Believe it or not, that was probably some 25 years ago. So it was a very different world. So in the end, my dad caved. He could see that I was trying. He could see I was trying to apply myself. But he caved and said, look, why don't you come and be my apprentice? So that's what I did. And it was no easy task, Steve. I think being if anyone who knows my dad would know that he was never going to take it easy on me just because I was his apprentice. So I probably got the hardest ride of all of the apprentices in that business at the time because it was never going to be seen that, Fred Johnson's son's going to get an easy ride here just because he's the governor's son. But very quickly from being on site and doing my formal qualifications as an electrician, I was enjoying the mathematical and the design process, the science-based topics within the learning process to become an electrician. So I decided once I'd got my apprenticeship, I was going to continue learning. Decided to embark upon a long-distance course that would get me up to a foundation degree level. But little did I know that was going to take so long. Doing distance learning does take time, and it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But suited me.
I imagine it takes a huge amount of discipline to do as well.
Yeah, it suited my lifestyle. It suited the way that, I could have a break in the week to concentrate on my studies. I could go and do the hard graft, sort of Monday, Tuesday, and it was a break on Wednesday for college. back to site Thursday, Friday to continue the hard graft again. But I enjoyed that process, and it was for me, but it's not necessarily for everybody. But I think what it does show is the direction of travel towards that degree level or foundation degree level doesn't necessarily have to be through uni, and people can achieve it in many different ways. Uni's not for everyone. So there was a transition for me, and that this was probably the hardest part, I think, of my career, was the transition from site-based knowledge and installation to taking a design role. Now, it wasn't because I wasn't able to do the design duties. It's because you're asking a company, or a number of companies it transpired that I applied to take a risk on someone that has no proven design background. They don't have a degree, in the formal manner that you would expect. They don't have a degree. They don't have the design background that you would expect any intermediate engineer or graduate engineer to come on board and have. So at the time, I was incredibly grateful. And at the time, I think my firstborn son was due, and I decided that was the time I was going to make the jump from site-based to design-focused consultancy. So I took at the time, it was a significant pay cut, because I was working 7 days a week on site, and I was able to earn overtime, to then going into what is essentially a grad role at consultancy. But you've got to make the jump at some point.
Who was that you went to work for?
So the company, and this is where the journey began. So it was a company called Aeronaceous Building Consultancy, is a company that don't exist anymore. I was very grateful to Steve, who was the managing director there at the time, for taking a chance on me. Took a chance, took a guy that was, obviously had the rabbit in the headlight look about him, of about to embark on family life. He's got a mortgage. He's
spinning a lot of plates.
No
degree.
No degree. What am I going to do with this guy when he comes in the office? But I think bottom line was head down, focus, and just which was a challenge for me. Focus, but just get on with the hard yards, and show your worth. And I think that's what I tried to do. But sadly, Aeronaceous went into administration about 8 months, 9 months. So it's my first consultancy role. There was a lot riding on it for me, but sadly went into administration, and I had to look for another opportunity, which I found, which I was very lucky to find. But I had that standing at that point, Steve. So I had that 8 months, 9 months.
It was a platform to apply for your next consultancy role.
Yeah, and as with you and I, probably interviewed a lot of candidates over the years. Spent a lot of time speaking to people entering the industry, and without that proven knowledge, it's really hard to justify taking a risk, and you're going purely on gut. So having at the time it was the BSF days, and I've done a lot of schools, a lot of education facilities in that 8-month window. Whether that was commissioning because they were coming to an end, or small design tasks that I was given by the senior engineers at the time, I had that knowledge base that I could now go and talk to someone about.
In terms of finding your new role, how did that come about? Was it a contact that you already knew? Was it a cold application to a new consultancy? Was there a relationship there for you to leverage?
From site-based?
No, sorry, from your first consultancy that went into administration onto your next gig.
Yeah, so again, very different world back then. There wasn't. I think it was via a recruiter, Steve, if I remember. So the only route you had was via a recruiter. So you could demonstrate your knowledge and expertise via CV to a new employer, tell them where you wanted to go, where you would like to be in terms of location, salary, everything else. So it wasn't by word of mouth, but unfortunately, reputations of businesses was by word of mouth. So, you was presented with 3 or 4 companies that were looking for engineers, choose 1 or 2 of them, because the other third one maybe isn't for you.
Gotcha. Just trying to look back in terms of timing. What was that, kind of 2013 kind of time?
No, it would have been earlier than that. 2006, 2007.
Oh, really? Okay, much earlier. So you jumped over. So the new company that you joined, that you picked from the 3, who were they?
So I moved then to a company I had a short list, or a long list rather, a company called Mighty, and this was the engineering, but Mighty were a massive beast and still exist today, but this was the engineering arm of Mighty. So they do a lot of hard services, soft services, but this was the engineering arm, and again very focused on the education sector. But I didn't take an opportunity with them. They were a front runner. I took an opportunity to go into a more design consultancy based role, whereas Mighty were very much contractor based role in terms of fixed MEP installations up to Reba 5. But I took an opportunity to go to AWA Consultancy, which was out in Essex, which sadly recently shut their doors as well. Not at the time I was there, obviously. I joined them. Yeah, it feels like a long time ago, Steve, when I'm sort of trying to recall the history of my career.
It is a long time ago. Bringing it slightly more forward to, I say present day, but not quite present day, because I think our paths crossed when you were at Medland Metropolis, which I think
That's
you
right.
must
Yeah.
have joined there about 2013, 2014, something like that.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, I think so. It was about that. So I think at the time it was Christian Pakes was the associate director there at the time when I joined, and then became director within a year or so of me joining. For those that know Christian, he's now at Collins Construction.
I do. I know him very well. Famous for turning up to meetings wearing sunglasses, if I recall correctly.
I don't think he ever takes his sunglasses off his head, Steve. But I learned a lot from Christian. In those years I was at Medlands, they were enjoyable years. They were fantastic years. To be part of a small consultancy in the UK that just had a different slant on the way things should be delivered, designed, that was, we branded ourselves as the designer's choice of engineer. So people would come to us for that more conceptual design. And that design-focused element, maybe we thought outside the box a bit more than the bigger corporates.
To be fair, I look back on that time very fondly. I would have been at Core 5, I think, at the time, and we were working with Medlands on Coca-Cola's office at Happiness House, which obviously Medlands, which was a great job with Maury Smith.
Unbelievable project.
Had many meetings and then followed by drinks with the Medland guys.
But they didn't last too long.
They didn't. It was a fond memory. So in terms of your role then at Medlands, so you joined as a senior electrical engineer?
Joined as a senior engineer, and very quickly, and I think this is a good insight into where I've landed now and what I enjoy about smaller consultancies, coming either from the ground up or medium-sized practices that are well established as a brand. The amount of exposure you get in a small consultancy to business activities, fee proposals, to BD, to marketing, the amount of responsibility that's on your shoulders in the design process and the technical skills you learn when you're collaborating in a small office. I loved everything about that. Everything about it. And as a result, under Christian's leadership, I moved pretty quickly from senior engineer up to associate, and then finally at senior associate at the end of my time at Medlands before I moved on. But at the time, I forget how much time I was there, Steve. I think about 4 or 5 years, I think, overall.
Yeah, I think sort of 14 to 17, I think.
About that.
Yeah. About
that, yeah. So it was about 4 years I was there, approximately. Fantastic time I had there. Great team, all driving in the same direction, Steve, which is something I'm quite keen on as well, was being part of the small practice we have now whilst we're in our infancy in London. So
then since Medlands then, I think there were 2 other sort of blocks within your career. So you left Medlands, I think, in 17 and went to HPF, Hurley Palmer Flat.
Yeah. So another person that in my career that I've admired from afar, both for their technical prowess and very strong reputation in the industry, is Fiona Goddard. Fiona now at ACOM. So I'm essentially moved to what was HPF at the time because of Fiona. I wanted to work with Fiona and alongside her on some of the projects that, believe it or not, at Medlands at the time we were doing technical due diligence on for a bank called Wells Fargo. It was a significant size project for us at Medlands given our size, and we were doing the technical due diligence, which took years and years. So we ended up not winning the main project, although I found out who won the main project and was very keen to continue working on that project. So you
jumped ship and then managed to continue to work on the Wells Fargo stuff. But
ironically, no. But but I made the bold move of contacting Fiona, wanting to be part of the winning team, so to speak. But as conversations progressed, I think that was being done out of a separate office that wasn't part of the London contingent that Fiona was part of. So it was never to be to work on that project. But what that did do was lead me into working for a large consultancy, 200, 300 engineers as a practice in London over 2 offices. London itself, I think, had about 250 staff on floor in an open plan format. So completely different landscape to what I was used to at Medlands.
How did you find that? Because obviously you said you enjoy it, and I'm the same. I love working in small teams. Every part of the team has a huge role to play. How did you find that shift, jumping into what is essentially a blue chip consultancy?
Really challenging, Steve, if I'm being honest with you. Really challenging. I found the pace was a lot slower, and that's no reflection upon the business or the people there. It's just the scale and size of projects you're on and the time those projects take to build up a head of steam. Whereas on Medlands, it was always very much interview, appointment, off you go. There was no downtime between, that's, and you were probably very much used to that as well. Core 5 at the time, those projects just came and went in. Apart from the construction phase, the design process, you were done 6 months, 8 months, sometimes 9, but you were in and out really quick on those conceptual bits to the Reba stage 3. And that was the bit that was the most obvious to me. So I went over to HPF as an associate director, but that was the most obvious to me, and the most apparent was I'd stepped away from the things I loved, which was getting, roll my sleeves up, getting stuck in on design, liaising with the design team, being creative, to then a more management focused role in a large corporation, which was alien to me. I've been managing as a senior associate at Medlands. I've been managing a team, but we're all one and the same. We're all rolling.
You were still doing the work.
Yeah, still doing still doing the design, using my pens, using CAD, using whatever to a common outcome. And that's what wasn't visible to me at HPF at the time. So I struggled, Steve. I struggled with sort of a bit of an identity crisis and imposter syndrome at that point, as why am I, I'm here as a small fish in a big pond now, but holding the title of associate director. And so what do I know? What do I know to be part of this business? And that led me to being honest about it and open. Is I just didn't enjoy the final months at HPF, just due to, as I said, the pace of the work, the type of work. It just didn't suit my style of working. So I was approached, it's around Christmas time, 2018, by Chris Doyle at GDM Partnership. And those conversations lasted not very long. So I was going to potentially be moving, wasn't very happy where I was, to GDM Partnership, where I was offered a position as associate director there, a smaller business, had very much a family-run vibe.
And I can imagine sitting down with Chris and Craig, kind of playing back to your Christian Pakes kind of days. They're characters, and I think quite suited to your personality. Very
much so. I'm fair to say very influential to me. As mentors over the years. All these people I'm mentioning have been very influential to the way I operate as an individual. Some of the work ethic I have is as a result of working with those individuals, and some of the ways in which you approach projects as well is because of the things you've been taught over the years by these individuals. So, having the conversations with Chris was easy in those early days around, what is it that GDM can offer me that HPF couldn't at the time? And at the time we're a small business. We've got 2 offices, a small business on the scale of things, right? But punching, very high in terms of the caliber of clients they had, the type of projects they're winning. It's a very successful business, and Gary Draper and Dave Mosby to this day still have a very successful business and practice, and no doubt they're still very proud of. So it's just a very different dynamic, Steve, and one I was attracted to, and ended up joining them in January 19, which gave me a year's run up before the world collapsed.
So I joined as an associate director, and were you dropped straight into sort of the Cat B fit out world? What stuff were you getting involved?
So there was, I wouldn't say it was a clear split in the office, but we crossed a lot of worlds between us, but there was very much Chris and I were focused on the Cat B and that occupier workplace fit out part of the industry, which then, as you know, Steve, it crosses over with the Cat A, the base build, technical due diligence. There's a whole world that crosses over in that commercial bubble, if you like, and the work that sits within that.
Obviously, you've then jumped from what was a big consultancy to a much smaller beast at GDM.
Well,
Did you find that you were able to then go back to doing what you enjoyed doing? So you were covering a lot of things. You were then getting involved in fee proposals. You were then back with the pens out and the CAD. Did that happen?
It did. I got everything I wanted at GDM and more in terms of access to the delivery of projects, which is one thing that I've always held quite close to me is being able to see a design through from start to finish and deliver a project that hopefully clients are happy with and designers are happy with the outcome of your input. That's something that I've held very close for a lot of years, and I missed, I think, at HPF because you're one step removed from that.
Sure.
You're going to principals meetings, you're not involved in the design so much. It's just the way it was operated there. Yeah, so at GDM I got all of that I was looking for.
And I said you must have enjoyed your time, because looking at your sort of career path, you were there for nearly 5 years.
Pretty much.
November 23.
Pretty much. And I think on paper, when I look at my career, you know what the fit out market's like, Steve. You could do 4 projects a year. You could do one over 3 years. It depends on the scale and size, but I've done a lot of projects over the years in the fit out world. A workplace is something I'm quite passionate about. And I think I've probably done some of the best work at GDM to date. When I look at some of the projects and the clients that we work with, was phenomenal. I'm not entirely sure I'm allowed to mention any of them due to NDA, but there was significant scale.
I've worked with GDM on a few of those jobs that I'm sure you're going to mention, so I get it. And I think everyone listening, they know GDM and they know the kind of the caliber of work they get to do. So talk to me about sort of we're in 2023. Obviously, we've had all of the COVID stuff, which we won't touch on. Obvious issues that go along with that, not just for you and GDM, but for every other person in the industry. So we're looking at sort of mid to back end of 2023. You're at GDM, enjoying yourself. There is one more career move that's about to happen. Do you just want to talk to me about sort of what was going through your mind then in 2023? And kind of what steered you to where you are now at ADP and how that opportunity came about, I suppose.
What I'll do first, Steve, is it's a challenge to talk about this in a way that doesn't come across contrived. I suffered for many years with issues with drink and my love of alcohol. It didn't disappear. So 2 years ago, only a few weeks ago, in 2022, I got sober. I got better. I got sober. So I think from 2022 onwards was a real journey for me in both personal discovery, mental well-being. My mental health definitely suffered. I wrangled with a lot of things, during that self-discovery period right up to 2023. So contextually now, you move forward to 2023, middle of 23. I'm now 18 months into being sober, and now I'm feeling better about myself. I understand myself a lot more, and now I'm looking for a new challenge. So it's no reflection on GDM me moving on at all, but I had some conversations with ADP, who approached me direct from Australia. So as a business, we've got 5 offices in Australia, approximately 300 people or thereabouts. So significant size practice over there, classified as a tier 1 over there, and delivering billion-dollar precincts with some significant fees and some huge input. So, when they originally approached me via LinkedIn, it was like, do I want a conversation?
Was that out of the blue? Was there any connection at all?
No connection at all. Although I'm told, maybe I should ask the question. I was told that there was a connection, and my name had come up somewhere. Right. One of our founding directors, Jason Afford, spent a lot of years in the UK, 2002, 2003, and worked at TBA. So there's a link to the UK. And our CEO, Belinda Coates, has also worked for international businesses and worked in London also. So there are links there, and I'm sure they did a hell of a lot of research before, or maybe not. Maybe I was the only one who they approached. Who knows?
I'm sure they did.
Well, the only one accepted the job
That's
anyway.
It, yeah.
But they did a lot of research, I'm sure, and approached several people. And it was that totally cold email out the blue via LinkedIn. Would you be open to a conversation? And it was via a recruiter that they'd engaged with in Australia. And it was, would you be open to a conversation? I'm working with an Australian practice that are looking to expand and have a growth plan over the next 5 years. Initially, I think I ignored the first message. I was like, I don't know. I mean, how many do you get, Steve? Recruiters, whether that be, services that they can offer you, or, we have an opportunity that we think would fit.
Would I like to go and be a project associate at a blue chip quantity surveying firm in London? Let me think about that.
Yeah. Or do I want to go and join a car manufacturing outfit as head of engineering? Please read my profile and you realise I don't do anything like that. So anyway, it was completely out the blue, and I ignored the first one. Second one, thought, do you know what? Maybe, this now feels a more personal message. It didn't feel like such a blanket email that you would receive. And it was very much, we'd like to speak to you further, Dan. Your experience at X projects you've delivered. I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. So that led down the path of a video call with our CEO and 2 founding directors, Jason Afford and Laurent Delou, and our CEO, Belinda Coates. I think it's fair to say if you speak to them, I would hope that they echo this. We've spoke about this, but there was an immediate chemistry on the call, and the energy was unreal. I'm trying to match the energy that we have in the offices in Australia is next level, but it felt like it was matched in terms of what I wanted from a conversation. And that sort of developed very quickly to another VC, and I recall that I think it was the third and final interview I had. I was in Cornwall with my kids in my camper van. They asked for a call at 7 a.m, which I couldn't refuse. It was like, this feels really...
With
like
the time difference as well.
Yeah, well, the time difference was a challenge, and it was a point of, I was enjoying talking to them so much in those interviews, in those early days. And then we had this conversation piece, and the only place I could get a signal was on the edge of a cliff. In Cornwall, and I had this beautiful view behind me of the sea. The sun was out. It was middle of August. It was glorious. I had sunglasses on. I had my laptop propped up. I think it was on a bush on this edge of the cliff, and I was sat in a camp chair with my mug of coffee.
So it looked like one of those fake Microsoft Teams backgrounds.
They called me out immediately. It's like, is that a backdrop? I was like, no. So I then had to tip my laptop over the edge of the cliff and show them the surfers that were all in the waves. And they said like the commitment to do that was like the tipping point for them. It's like, this guy, this could be for us, but I'll let them tell you the story another time, Steve. So there we were. So then it was the 3 months lead up to leaving GDM, which became 2 months, and there I was in November 23. Just me.
Just you flying the flag.
Just me in London.
So in terms of, obviously, so they approached you on LinkedIn. What opportunity were they selling you? What dream were they selling you? So that they were looking for you to kick off a London office for ADP.
That's exactly right. So the role they were looking for wasn't the role I took, believe it or not. They were looking for someone that would operationally look after the business, and someone that would have a client base, could win work, the usual director level involvement. And as the conversations went on with the guys at ADP in those early days, they offered me something completely different. That, for me, was the bit that really tipped the balance for me. For a company to think outside the box and say, we've approached you for a role, we've thought about this role, and actually we think you're better suited to this. For them to create a bespoke role for me in the UK that allows me to grow the business, to strategize how we move forward as an office, as a UK office, that was the bit that was really attractive for me. And if you couple that with being able to scale a business with the backing of a tier 1 practice, like, how often do people get that opportunity? Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, so essentially, you're a London-based startup, but with a pedigree and a support network behind you that's very, very well established.
Very well established. And that all, for me, I did my research on them as a business. I asked Christian Pakes, that we spoke about earlier, being Australian himself, would you know anyone that knows this business back home? He did a bit of research for me. I spoke to several other people as well, and the feedback was excellent across the board, because they're an unknown entity to us in the UK, completely unknown, but the feedback was excellent. And again, that was another tick in the box for me to go forward and charge ahead. But the pedigree bit is important to note. That was, for me, that was a really good nod to, this is the right move for you.
So that was November 23 that you joined.
I started in November 23. Yeah.
Just you?
Just me
straight
and my
into
laptop.
A serviced office, I assume. Business cards printed, ready to start building ADP London.
ADP
we're now
London, yeah.
6 months later.
Well, thereabouts, yeah. The business actually started operating, open doors in October. But obviously, I was part of the launch for the business then, in terms of the tours of London, and the directors were over, and we met a lot of existing client bases, all out of hours, of course, for me. I met all of the existing client base they had, and I was blown away. The level of planning that had gone into the week they were here, the number of meetings were phenomenal. I think if I recall correctly, Steve, in that October week, there was 26, 27 meetings. I wasn't privy to all of them. 26 meetings. There was a client dinner where I think there was 30 of the guests from across the week attended, and there was some big brands there, some big, household names for us in the UK.
In terms of clients.
That were clients, developers that were friends and colleagues of theirs in Australia. And those relationships had now been passed over to the UK of, we want to grow. Are you able to support us where you can? And so far, the support has been fantastic from the ADP Black Book alone, has been phenomenal.
And then in terms of sort of the challenges then, so launched October, November last year. We're now 6 months in. In terms of your, ambitions, targets, for you, it's a blank piece of paper. You get the benefit of, creating a company from scratch with support. But what excited you about taking that opportunity? Because for a lot of people, that isn't something they want to do. Essentially, here's a piece of paper. How do you want to do this? That would scare off a lot of people. So
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people would be put off by the task in hand. But work winning, you put all the other stuff aside, the strategy and the work winning is something I've always done and enjoyed. You're right, Steve, you're spot on. But not every engineer, A, wants to do that, and B, is able to do that. But it's something I've always been able to do. Navigated it myself. I've not done any sort of marketing training or BD training. It's just something I've enjoyed and naturally done. And I think the challenge of doing that was the bit that really excited me, was to go and get that huge dopamine hit of find a project, find a lead, chase the lead, win the work.
It's addictive.
Yeah, massively addictive. But then, as I mentioned earlier, during this conversation, the ability to deliver that. So the winning bit is important. The delivery bit is more important. But the winning bit is being able to grow a business from scratch. Obviously, with the support of Australia and the Black Book we've got is phenomenal. That has to be said. That has to be noted. To have the autonomy as well that I've been given has been fantastic. Fantastic. I'm not sure what I expected, Steve, from the business in Australia in terms of monitoring and recording what I'm doing and managing that through. I'm not sure what I expected, but the amount of autonomy I've got has been very much appreciated.
Excellent. Well, every time we've caught up, you can tell that you're revitalised and you're enjoying the challenge, I suppose. So we're sort of six months in. How does the team look like now? How are you finding building it? Because presumably this is the first time that you've ran the business and built a team from scratch.
Yeah, I think brewing the tea, taking the tea bag out and serving the tea, cleaning the cups, as an analogy, everything all at once, it is a lot. It's a lot. And I think it's probably more than I thought it would be, because it is everything from recruitment to the finances to, notebooks for the office, or to looking for more space, which is a really lovely problem to have. But all of these things are all playing out, every day all at once. They're not bite-sized chunks. These are all big things as we grow as an office. Right now, we are in need of one more engineer to be at 7 in our office. But at the moment, we're at critical mass. So we have the full core offering, all going, working on live projects, and the sustainability piece, which I think we'll come on to separately. But in terms of recruitment for the office, I don't think I appreciated how difficult it would be. In the early days, not that many months ago, in the early days, it was me scouring LinkedIn for people I knew, people that were recommended, or even engineers that were at practices that have got a great reputation. So to follow that through, getting nowhere fast, same as a recruiter approaching you on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people choose to ignore those if they're happy.
You were the one sending the emails.
I was
that
guy. Yeah, I was that guy. I wore my recruitment hat very well, I think. But then, taking a different tack of, okay, we've exhausted this route. It's not really providing anything for us. There's no fruit coming from this at all. Let's start using a recruiter. So we went exclusive with a single recruiter. But again, the quality, when I say the recruitment's difficult, there are CVs. There's CVs out there. There's candidates. There's people always looking to move. It's always the nature of the beast. But I have been so surprised, and I don't think I've ever seen a problem like this in all the years, been in this industry, where candidates are expecting a level to be offered to them, which comes with a salary expectation, but they haven't got the experience that backs up the level they're after. So, and also there seems to be an awful lot of CVs where people have moved year on year or every 18 months, which I'm not sure is a generational thing, or I'm not sure that's a product of COVID. If I'm not happy, I deserve more, I'm going to move on. Absolutely fine with that. But there seems to be a lot of those CVs out there where they've got 18 months or a year and they've moved on to something else. Very similar to what you would have seen with someone who's done a contract role, but they're not, they're perm staff. And then you have to start questioning, if you've done a year somewhere, what have you really learnt about the business you're in? Number one, what have you really learned about the projects you're on? Because most projects last longer than a year. And how have you really honed your technical skills in that year? So you can't be post-grad for, do your graduate, do your degree practice, spend a year there, post-grad, move on, do a year somewhere else, move on, and then call yourself senior as well as be a chartered engineer. I find that really difficult to comprehend.
Yeah, listen, it's not a unique issue to building services. I can look at the cost consultancy market as well, and you can see that people get chartered, and that comes with a promotion. Typically, if they don't within a certain period of time get either another promotion or a commensurate pay rise, they know somewhere else will offer that in the market, and they'll jump from a PS to an SPS. And as you say, within a year, they could jump from an SPS, probably by leaving the firm, pick up associate. If that is the case, at least table that offer, and they can then negotiate a promotion and a pay rise where they are. And suddenly you've gone from a project surveyor to an associate or an associate director in 3-4 years, as a mechanism of either jumping around or as a talent retention mechanism that I would say some of the bigger consultancy firms have to operate in, purely because everyone else is doing it. So no, I completely understand the problem. And then what happens is you end up sitting around a project meeting with what should be very senior consultants that bring a lot of experience to the table that in actual fact don't. They've got a title, they've got a badge. It is a criticism, but it isn't a criticism. It's kind of human nature. You want promotion and you want pay rise. And it's hard. If someone, back in my younger days, if someone tried to collar me from DL and said, look, come over here, we're going to give you a promotion and a pay rise, very hard for the individual to say, thank you very much, but I don't actually think that my current skill set and experience supports that title. It just doesn't happen. It's an interesting problem that you've picked up on.
Yeah, and the constructive criticism, shall we call it, in the workplace to engineers that aren't quite where they want to be isn't always received well. And that also can be a trigger for people to move on. We don't think you're here, but we will support you to get to this point that you think you're at. And then somebody may have a higher opinion of themselves or feel disgruntled for you for having that opinion, for mentoring that person in a constructive way, and they may move on. That's certainly been an experience over the last few years that I've had, not at ADP as yet, but it's been an experience I've had where, if you're not capable of that position, you shouldn't really be asking for it. It's not about us telling you when you're ready, but if on paper you're not able to do X, Y, and Z, look at it like a driver's license. If you're not able to drive the car, why would I give you a license for it?
No, exactly that. I also think it's like actually a really good analogy. You can take a driving test and drive a car. It doesn't mean you're a good driver yet. That comes with time. That comes with learning the mistakes that can be made and how to rectify them. I think it's easier within a much larger tier one consultancy to have that workforce, perhaps with a lack of skill set. Lack of skill set is the wrong term because I don't mean that. But I think for you as a much smaller business building a new brand in London, if you send your guys to sort of project meetings that we're on, you've only got one chance really, early days, to set the tone, to set the the image and the reputation. And I think that comes from hiring an experienced and capable workforce.
I think that's really refreshing to hear that from the other side of the table, if you like, Steve, because that's been the feedback we've had sort of even prior to launching in London. ADP had done a lot of market research as what is it you want from a consultancy in London. And MEP has got currently a really bad reputation, and I can't disagree with a lot of the feedback we get. And it's as a result of this, and you mentioned earlier that you can't call it a lack of knowledge or skills. I'm not going to say verbatim, but there is a skills gap. There's a massive skills gap in the market in that intermediate to associate level position, and maybe even into that associate level position, because engineers just aren't honing their skills technically before they then want to step away from the technical elements and the delivery elements to then the management process, which is a totally different field.
You've reminded me, we had, I think it was James Pellett on, was it the last episode I think we did, and there's a name for it. It's called the Peter principle. It's where you're promoted and promoted and promoted to point of failure, essentially, where you're not gaining the necessary skills and experience that you would in days gone by. You would, and it will be a slower progression. So you end up in a very senior role without the experience to back it up to a certain degree. And look, some people get by, but I think ultimately,
but who suffers as a result of that, Steve?
The clients and the projects suffer as a result.
But also, someone's going to be there.
It's reflective on everybody's fee. We're looking at sitting around a table, and there's issues with the M&E. It's not just an M&E issue; it trickles down to everybody around the table. Whether that's contractor in terms of risk, program, associated costs with program, QSs need to then get involved to start supporting that. If it's a coordination issue from an architectural perspective, then we're bringing in architectural. But ultimately, it's as you say, it's the client that bears the risk and the cost associated with that.
Internally, the design team, who's going to pick up the pieces, for someone's lack of ability to convey technically what a project needs, convey or collaborate with architects, with PMs, with QSs, who's going to be aware that they need to convey issues and risks to those team members if they haven't honed their skills in that field. So, the smallest of detail, as you will well know, the smallest of detail might be super important to someone else because it may have a huge cost impact. It may have a huge cost impact. It may be a complete disaster for the designers to incorporate what it is you're proposing, but people are happy just to sit on their own chair and do their own thing.
So because of this issue that we're talking about, and because the fact that that you're looking to build an experienced team where job title and salary to a certain degree, but we can park the money for now, but more importantly, job title matches reflection. So from an external perspective, when we meet your guys, we know what we're getting. That is a challenge for you then in terms of attracting talent and getting them into the business.
Yeah, it's a challenge for attracting talent. I am so lucky and very proud of the team we have right now, and we are continuing to build, and it's a certain type of person. I didn't know that that's what we were doing, but when you look on paper at the team we have, there's the huge levels of collaboration they have, the openness, the honesty, the way they interact with design teams. On all the projects we're working on, the feedback is excellent, and that's not to blow smoke up anybody's backside at all, or to even sell us as a point that maybe we don't sit in, because that's just the feedback we've got, and that's me being honest. But in terms of attracting talent, trying to grow a team, and I'm trying to create a culture for a business that already exists in Australia. We are the first core office outside of Australia on what is a 5-year growth plan for us. So what we do here is so important for me and for the business. It's so important that people are present, people are willing to be present, and they're buying into the journey that we're going on over the next 5 years. Because the landscape for us, the reality is the landscape of the business in the UK in a year's time, maybe even 6 months' time, will be dramatically different. Like the size of the space we're in, as a business will be different. The number of heads we have will be different. The territories we're operating in will be different. So someone's got to come on board and be excited about all that, because if you're not, it's not for you.
Yeah, I get that completely. So, I mean, looking ahead, what do you what are your goals, or the vision for ADP London? Is it, if we look ahead, and actually, to be fair, I'll ask you at the end of this call, the 12-month vision, look ahead. What do you think is going to happen over the next 12 months? So we can cover some of that then. But I think, is there a goal? Is it a headcount target? Is it a revenue target? Is it sector-specific targets? How are you thinking ahead as a business?
It's a good question, that one. I'm not sure there's a single answer that will cover that, because I think every business, and certainly a business like ADP, if you're expanding, there will be a business strategy to justify that expansion plan. Certainly the way that we're operating, over the next 5 years as a business is incredibly exciting. So our goal, our target as a business is to open London, which we've done, which was a year ahead of the curve from what was originally planned, Singapore, and then we will be looking at North America. Don't know what that looks like yet, but Singapore will definitely be an office for us over the next 5 years. So as a business now, when all information that's freely available, we're about £30 million or $60 million as a business overall. We have a very strong desire to grow that business, which we have done 20% year on year over the last few years as a minimum. I think it goes back 3 or 4 years, 20% year on year. So if you look at the infancy of our business, on paper, we're not that old, 13 years old. It's not, when you look at some of the bigger outfits that have been around for 20, 30, 40, even 100 years, some practices, it'd be a very different landscape for them. We're in our infancy, but we've got involvement from the founding directors day in, day out, as much or as little as you want, in terms of the way we are going to be growing as a business and targeting certain types of clients, certain types of projects. Brand is really important to us, the brand and what that stands for. And we've got one of the largest ESD teams in Australia for any business. I think we've got about 40 environmental engineers that work for us as a practice, which is significant. So the knowledge base there is phenomenal. And I'm going to step back on what I said earlier. The culture and what we're trying to create here in London needs to replicate our brand in Australia. It's got to match. What we stand for in Australia should be what we stand for in the UK. It's going to be local nuances to that, but if you know the brand ADP, you know what we stand for, right? And that's got to, and that's a really challenging part, Steve. So going back to your original point on recruitment a little while ago, getting someone to buy into that is a challenge, especially if they're coming on board as an intermediate or senior engineer, right? It's not always someone's desire to be part of that journey. That they might want to come in, do their 9 to 5 and go home. And that's absolutely fine. But right now,
I think you need people like that to have a successful business.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can't just have people like that. I think that's
you need a real mixed bag, and having that mixed bag of talent and in a business our size right now means that we need what we need right now. If that makes sense, the other stuff will come.
In terms of then sustainability, touched on a few times, and having dug into ADP overseas, you can see how much of a foundation that is for them as a business. If you just want to, because I'm actually conscious we're getting up to the hour now.
Sorry,
it's amazing how you're worried about how quickly you get through your stuff, but in reality, as I said, the time flies. In terms of ADP London, your core offering to London clients, the type of clients and type of work that you as a business you think can add the most value to? What does that look like? Just for people listening, if they're thinking about, are you the right kind of outfit that they want to work with? What would you say?
So we're definitely the outfit you want to work with. If you're
would say that.
Would say that. Look, I'm going to give you some context to this answer. Somebody asked me before I started ADP London what I thought the market looked like, the landscape looked like for MEP, for sustainability, for lighting design, for fire, all of our core services, right? So we've got loads of core service offerings that we have in Australia. And what is it we want to bring from those cherry pick right now, but over time delivering them all? What does it look like for us? And I think my initial conversation that I had with someone was, I think we'll be doing 60 to 70% MEP, because that's my strength. That's just being selfish. That's a response, I can answer. And it will be 30 to 40% sustainability focused. Was I wrong? Completely. Every single conversation I've had since November has been around sustainability. And it has been around how early sustainability engineers, environmental engineers are getting brought on board before MEP now. So in terms of, if you look at our order book, 70% of what we have on the order book right now is sustainability focused. 30-40% of that, arguably is MEP and other services. And that's about to change. We're tantalizingly close to a couple of really good things. And I think it will become a more 50-50 split. But I did not expect that, Steve. But what that tells me is that the market, clients, developers, asset managers are now aware of the importance strategizing ESD credentials or strategizing environmental requirements for projects. They are more aware of it, and they're cognizant and they're educated of the importance of this in the real estate sector, to the point where we, as an Australian business, Neighbours is a energy rating tool out there, but covers a lot more in terms of waste, water, etc. But over in the UK, it's relatively new in its infancy. I think there's, and I'm going to get this wrong, and our UK head of sustainability, Lauren, will probably kick me for this because I should know this. I think there's 5 projects that have a Neighbours rating in the UK. 5, just 5, which is, it's been around a few years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, in terms of numbers, you would expect that to be, if it was BREEAM, which you can get accredited, pretty much at the end of that 12-month cycle of a project, you'd expect that to be in the hundreds by now. But because of the onus of it and the information required to, you've got to be at 75% occupancy in a building before you can then apply to Neighbours and get your refined target or your star rating. We've had a lot of success in Australia with Neighbours as a business. We delivered some of the best 6-star properties that you'll see for the commercial real estate and retail landscape in Australia, and taking them from what is like 3 or 4 stars, which is pretty easy to achieve in terms of energy consumption, to a 6-star, which is phenomenal. So give you context, Steve, that a 6-star uses half the energy that a 5-star does. That doesn't mean that you're going to halve the number of lights you have on or halve the number of fan coils. You still have the same outputs in your building, but you've got to use half of the energy consumption from the grid connection. So you're now reliant upon renewables in that landscape of your energy modelling. I'm pretty excited to see where this goes in London and who's going to be first to tip that, because you look at the size of roofs, you look at the size of the facades and the angles and how built up it is, certainly in the city, in the square mile. How you would even get to a 6-star is baffling. And I'd love to work with a company, real estate manager, developer to advise on that, because it's something we've had a lot of success on in route to market here. We have the in-house advisory skills, and we're able to offer that service, which a few consultancies can offer in London. Do understand it, but it's the level of expertise that comes with it from well-established business like us that's been doing it for a number of years, a decade or more in Australia, to infancy here. We bring a lot of value to that conversation, and I've had some fantastic conversations with some large banking institutes I can't mention, and also some asset managers looking to do Neighbours accreditation on some significant new base builds in the city.
Exciting, looking forward to that. Look, I think we're probably about time to draw this to a close. What I like to ask all of our guests at the end is for a kind of a 12-month prediction, and that can be as broad brushed as you like. You as a business, where would you like to be in 12 months' time? Are there things within the industry that you'd like to see happen over the next 12 months that may or may not happen? The reason being is that, in a year's time, we can get you back on the show and we can at least have something to reflect upon. And I think that what will be interesting is that, you're very much at the start of your ADP London journey. I think perhaps even, blank piece of paper, where would you like to be in 12 months' time?
Oh, where would I like to be in 12 months' time? Maybe on a beach.
I thought you were going to say
that. Somewhere sunny. As a business, where would I like to be? We're already exceeding growth targets if you look at headcount, but that's based upon pipeline. So we're trying to be, and this is where having the backing of a tier 1 pays dividends, because we may not be billing the numbers that equate to the headcount we have just yet, but we've got the backing to grow the team. Yeah,
which means you've got the resource there to properly resource projects.
Spot on. Right? And we have got the right headcount now to deliver significant scale projects with the model of Australian delivery as well. It's a different conversation entirely. So in 12 months' time, I think we'll be where we need to be in terms of headcount for London, and I think we'll probably exceed that. I mean, we might be looking at maybe 2.5 years numbers at year 2, or at 18 months even, where we'd be looking at in a year's time. I'd like to be, in terms of predictions, I maintain this, and I have said this for quite some time, and I think I'm probably not the only one, but I can see the cut and carve, the retrofit market going absolutely nuts in Q3 this year. I think a lot of the research I've done, research being conversations with large, pension funds, asset managers, they're predicting similar, but it will be dependent upon release of funds from pension funds or from the developers as to how that's unlocked. Someone needs to make a move. It's like a game of chess. Someone needs to make a move.
And that trickles down, to the consultancy services part on this side of the fence as well. And I think that's a combination of factors. It's interest rates, it's politics, with the elections later this year. But you're right, it's who's moving first, and once one does start, because we've got it, and say in terms of talking to our peers in the industry, there is a hell of a lot of work out there, and we've got fees in for a lot of it that have kind of accepted. We've won the job. We're just waiting for the trigger to be pulled.
Yeah, and
that seems to be a common theme that we're hearing. A much better place to be in than the market was, 18 months. 24 months ago, but there's still issues of delay in getting schemes off the ground.
Yeah, indeed. There's a delay in getting schemes off the ground, and we're seeing a lot of stuff go on pause. And even in Australia, have got an almost identical problem, but they haven't got the political landscape that we've got of a general election year, etc. So slightly different. But in terms of predictions, I've already seen an upward tick in the workplace sector, already seen an upward tick in inquiries coming our way, as well as speaking to people. There seems to be a lot more movement in the market, which is really positive, certainly leading into the second part of this year. We also have, in terms of sectors for us and sectors of focus, there's the commercial bubble, which is all encompassing. We have a sector focus for build to rent or living as well, which is something that I'm now looking to explore. Now we've found our feet and we're getting some work through the door. We can now focus on the next thing. And then the buzzword that is the buzzword of life sciences is our last focus sector. Now we have an exceptional experience of life sciences in Australia. We work with some of the biggest institutes out there and universities in terms of research. So if anyone's got pedigree to do it, we have as a business. But again, it's that learning process and it's that education piece. So we've got our technical director, Nigel Doxey's over in June. He's been doing life sciences in Australia and the UK for over 30 years now, way before it was a buzzword here. So we'll be targeting that market pretty heavily towards the back end of this year, I'm sure. Other than that, Steve, I'd just like to, over the next 12 months, which I already am really, is find some content and happiness in what I'm doing. I think if you're not having fun and you're not happy in what you're doing, it's a pretty miserable world.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a lovely place in the episode. Look, thank you ever so much for coming on, Dan. I've really enjoyed it. We'll reach out again the coming months, maybe when your life sciences guy comes over. Great to get him on the show, and we can discuss the nuances between Australian and UK life science projects.
I'd love to. I'm sure Nigel, as well as myself, this would be hugely out of his comfort zone. So I'm sure you want more dynamic people on your podcast and some MEP.
Absolutely
engineers.
not.
But thank you so much for having us, Steve.
Content is key. Look, pleasure, Daniel. Keep in touch, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Steve.
This podcast is sponsored by Fidgins, a London-based cost consultancy. Please visit fidgins.co.uk to find out more about our market-leading service and some of the amazing clients we get to work with. We're super open to guest recommendations for this podcast, so if there's anyone in the industry you'd like to get on the show, please visit the website or send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll try to make it happen. Thanks, and bye for now.